Konami have been making compilations almost as long as they have games, from Contra to Castlevania, Scramble to Silent Hill. They have a wealth of jewels within their gaming catalogue, yet the Metal Gear series is one of the brightest. Have they left this diamond in the rough? Tackling a classic collection like this, especially a minimum of 2 with a presumptive Volume 1 moniker, needs to factor in many aspects. As an avid fan of the series, it holds a warm fuzzy place in my retro gaming past, as I'm sure many of you. However, the vast built-in audience it has will have high expectations, correctly so, which it sadly falls short in many key technical areas. Now, much of the pack has been available before. The biggest new additions here are, for the first time since the PS1 Classic at least, Metal Gear Solid 1's PS1 emulation version is here, joined with 2 Nintendo Entertainment System releases of Metal Gear and Snake's Revenge, again emulated. All the other games are the same as the 2011 Metal Gear Solid HD collection from Bluepoint, and again, most likely all pure emulation of the PS3 or Xbox 360 versions, which includes the original MSX2 Metal Gear that started it all, and Solid Snake sequel, the groundbreaking Metal Gear Solid 2 and the GOAT of the series in Snake Eater. You can come at me in the comments. Now, all games look to be just a collection of emulators. This is one factor that can make or break a pack like this. And to explain, I want to break this review down into 3 key elements.
Commencing virtuous mission now.
The baseline performance and increases mean a minimum expected level it needs to hit relative to the age and platform it's coming from and running on. The technical and graphical execution, the extra content polish and cohesion of the package, i.e. what it offers and how it works as an archive of the titles and what makes it stand out or improve on prior releases. So let's start with our titular review title, Performance. Leaving the old NES and MSX2 out of the field on this one, as they run fine, we start with what should be a quick and easy win in Metal Gear Solid, yet we hit our first big problem, performance. And that can be as low as a snake's belly. Here, the original game, which this is tied to serial CPU logic, and thus, like many old games, the faster the frame rate or slower, the faster or slower the logic and speed of the title. And here, we see some serious issues in its emulation results, giving us consistent performance across all 3 tested consoles from the PlayStation 5 to Series S, dipping in the same places and causing big stutters. We need to caveat this with some confusion, although I wouldn't call it a negative, in the fact that you can choose multiple versions and even regions of the titles from the main menu. Be aware that whatever your region is set to, for me in Europe, in the UK, it defaults to the PAL territory version, which means you get 25 or 50 Hz. And this means in a progressive field, you get 25 frames per second. This is much slower than the American version or the Japanese NTSC version, which runs at 30 Hz or 30 FPS. The results here mean you will get a slower, more stuttery title overall, but you still get the same performance hiccups I'm showing here on both versions. Irrespective, they just scale relative to the CPU speed of the game itself and therefore the game logic. You'll still see the title and feel it dipping way under 20 FPS often on every single format, and this is game and emulation logic and nothing to do with the base hardware, just in case people think that's the cause. Compounding this is the PAL PlayStation 1 disc version running under software emulation here on my launch PS3 FAT model, holds much more consistent and stable performance than these newer versions. Certainly not a solid start for this snake's tail. Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 all improve over the old PlayStation 2 and Xbox originals and even the PS360 HD versions, even though they are just emulated versions of them. Helped immensely by the quality of those Bluepoint ports, and now we only get 60 FPS modes across all regions. Snake Eater on PlayStation 2 can and does often become memory bound and possibly bandwidth, mostly in the real-time cutscenes, but also gameplay as shown here with my UK PAL version using hardware emulation. We can see dips that can remain in the low teens for prolonged periods. The engine that ran both was capped to 50 or 60 FPS depending on your PAL, CCAM or NTSC region respectively, but it can skip between full or half refresh rates and even lower. The HD updates fixed all formats and countries to 60Hz, but even on the Xbox 360 it can dip into the 30s due to similar bandwidth heavy moments, such as you see here on screen with the Alpha Fire and later Hornets of the Pain. On these emulated versions, we are now sailing through 60 FPS across all current gen. Switch is not included in this look, as that is locked to 30 FPS on all games.
Hornets.
Metal Gear Solid 2 is a similar story, although some small dips do occur, but most often, as you see here, are intentional cinematic choices emulating the slow-mo blur look of Lethal Weapon's finale. They may look like dips and are held frames as our frame rate tool correctly shows, but they are by design in this case, unlike Metal Gear Solid 1 and the other noted single frame rate drops. The newer Bluepoint remasters run far better than they do on the old target platforms. Ultimately though, there's no significant improvement here over those HD collections. They are refined, but certainly not drastically, and in the case of Metal Gear Solid 1, it can actually perform significantly worse than the target hardware in the PlayStation 1 and other emulated states, even above and beyond in the PC and other areas. This means we're left with a 30 FPS title. Although it would have been complicated to improve this, it's well within Konami's range to do that, as they should have access to the source code. This wouldn't be impossible, and failing that, they always had the option to bring in the 60 FPS GameCube Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. But maybe that's something they're going to hold off in the Volume 2 collection. Okay, maybe not. So with performance being a bit of a mixed bag, certainly not bad, but certainly not good, what does the technical and visual elements offer? Well, starting again with Metal Gear Solid 1, we see a pretty low level of improvements, i.e. pretty much none. You have the choice of PAL or NTSC, which offers a slightly better image with PAL's 320x248 versus the NTSC's cropped top and bottom 224. Both run a base 320 width, which is contained within a 2880 border rather than the full 3840, which is boxed in with a choice of black or a selection of Metal Gear themed wallpapers. And that's it. There's no CRT filters, no forced widescreen options, no smooth textures, or even an increase in resolution option to increase the stability and shimmer. The same fingerprint, affine texture mapping and vertex warping of the PlayStation 1 is front and center on your LED or OLED screen of choice, which is why those CRT filters are really needed, as this is where the filters offer a great benefit. Even the SNES Mini, the Mega Drive Mini et al. All offer these, and even the old PS3 emulation offers forced widescreen and smoothing image options. A poor show that is carried over to the other titles, with the MSX and NES versions very bare bones indeed, and this includes Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3. But it gets worse than this. The visual quality is severely hampered by the gamma settings. It's far too high. Metal Gear Solid 1 here looks slightly brighter and more grey than black compared to the base PS1, but it's actually the better of the games, with Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 looking severely lacking in their brightness curve, 3 being the most affected. You can see darks look grey, whites look washed out, and all colour and image is oversaturated, ruining texture quality and detail, and meaning fine dark elements look far too bright and no longer look as good as they do on even the PS2 and Xbox 360 and PS3 versions. This is hampered even further by worse texture quality and anisotropic filtering, with even the PlayStation 2 offering sharper textures at oblique and perpendicular angles. This was obvious as soon as I booted up the games, and I was amazed at such a poor image quality. It impacts Metal Gear Solid 3 the worst though, with this bridge highlighting its dirty, muddy secret, and it amazes me it was not picked up. The soupy textures, oversaturated image and washed out colour leave the updated versions with a degraded image quality over those 12-year-old HD updates and even those 22-year-old originals. and due to the fact they have just emulated the games, you have no option to change the gamma within the engine. As per the originals, you had a brightness calibration screen to set your screen up as needed, not a welcome choice on a per game basis. The image quality of those textures really stands out, and in side-by-sides, the difference is obvious both in gameplay and cutscenes, and it really is an area they need to fix. Bad enough, but it has more issues. The subtitles are updated with a simple overlay over the originals, but in fast moving scenes, which is likely a vector precision issue, they can become out of line looking like a shadow, and in some first person sections they're completely misaligned and show part of the title below the new ones. Sound can also go out of sync with lip syncing in cutscenes, sound effects, and even comedic falls that are delayed after the enemy hits the ground. A great shame, as the superb 5.1 soundtracks and soundscapes in all three of these titles still stands up today, and although no worse in reality, they're simply not improved by these latency issues and shouldn't be present. Minor visual bugs and glitches in physics, animation and loading can crop up, and loading is at least much faster than any older version. Lacking CD and DVD access though does help. But the two biggest games still render at the same low resolution 720p upscaled back to 1080. They're not sharper than the originals, they're not more stable than the originals, and due to the noted texture and gamma issues are unarguably worse than those originals on the 360, the PS3, and even the same game in backwards compatibility mode on Xbox One or Series consoles, which is far less than the $60 or pounds this version will cost you.
They're coming for me. I'm finished!
Calm down. I'll get you out of here, I promise. And we've got some of the best backup we could ask for.
In regards to an archival legacy of the series, there is a great deal here to love. From detailed making-ofs, development, books, graphic novels, 3D renders of the original game boxes, scripts, videos, and even options to create fake Konami saves for the Psycho Mantis battle, controller options, and a wealth of history to wade through. Not at the focused or overwhelming level of the amazing Digital Eclipse's Atari 50 package last year, but it certainly has a great deal here for any Metal Gear Solid fan. But the presentation, and more so the cohesion of the entire package, is poor. Content is modular by design, as you have split XEs for each game. Even the NES games sit in a bonus package XE, 40 gigabytes in total, but language packs and other downloadable content needs to be chosen, causing issues such as some may end up playing the slower 50Hz European versions of Metal Gear Solid 1 by mistake, with no clean note on the frame rate impact the language choice would have helped, and is certainly an easy one to put in. The mix of in-game visual manual readers, poor integration with web browsers on consoles means some cannot even be navigated with a controller. The lack of any filters, features or enhancements to the core game though leave it feeling overpriced for the content and quality on offer. Compounding this is the refinement and overall visual quality is lacking, from textures and visuals that are far worse at times than the originals, no extras in modes, resolution or frame rates. Konami could run Metal Gear Solid 1 at 60 with development work, or they could have just included the GameCube Twin Snakes option. It runs under the same Metal Gear Solid 2 engine. It would have elevated this package to a much higher level, but as it stands, the content is excellent outside of the core games, which are still better played elsewhere. And that is probably the most damning statement I can make. With work, it could become an essential package in any gamer's collection, but right now, it feels overpriced and a little long in the tooth.
Is that thing finished?
No, this is only the end of Phase 1.
And that's it for another archival, technical and Metal Gear related deep dive. If you like what we do here on IGN Performance Reviews, keep it IGN, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Snake, respond! Snake! Snake!